My name is Piro. I'm the leader of the Norwegian ME Association, which I founded almost 20 years ago, literally from my bed because I was still very ill with ME. I was fortunate in that I was diagnosed very early by a doctor here in London who had ME herself. She gave me a lot of good and sound advice. I was lucky, and I'm grateful because it meant that I didn't have to go through what most people with ME have to go through, even now 20 years later. When the Norwegian ME Association was founded in 1987, we were, together with Holland, the first of the non-English speaking countries to start an ME association. 20 years, that's a long time ago and a lot of history. I shall not go into that, except to tell you that almost from the word go, we were in touch with the health authorities about the case of ME. Sometimes we received a polite reply, but mostly none. We wrote to almost all the different ministers of health as the years went by and governments changed. One member of the Norwegian Parliament brought up the question of ME in question time many years ago, and the then Minister of Health replied that they would continue to support the ongoing research. The truth was that there was no ongoing research. He might, however, have been referring to psychosomatic research. They have always been well-founded, we know that. Yes, the Wesley School is strong in Norway, very strong. We carried on fighting, and in 1995, ME was finally recognized as a diagnosis by the health authorities. And in 1999, we had managed to establish benefit rights for the people with ME. We thought that things might be easier, but they did not, on the contrary. It has been a hard battle ever since, and all the time. You all know it all. In November 2004, we managed to get a meeting with a member of parliament and did a story and picture presentation of the most severe cases of ME. It was strong. The member of parliament was in tears. She promised to do something, and she did. She forwarded a written question about the question of ME to the Minister of Health, who replied that the project would soon be initiated by the Norwegian Knowledge Centre for the Health Services, the Knowledge Centre for short. The Knowledge Centre is the same as the British NICE, which is what I have been asked to talk about. The project was titled Diagnosing and Treatment of CFS in Children and Adults. The Knowledge Centre wanted us, the consumers, to participate in a project and invited 2 representatives from the Norwegian ME Association, 2 from Menin, the ME network in Norway, and 2 anonymous communicators communicating via email, one being a young person with ME and the other an adult with medical and scientific background. In all, there were 6 consumers representing the patients. The Knowledge Centre had invited consumers to participate in other projects earlier, but this was the first time that the consumers stayed through the entire project. There were to be no communication between the group of professionals and the patient's representatives. No explanation given. In fact, they refused to give it to us. The committee of the Norwegian ME Association elected their 2 representatives carefully, as we were aware that the work would demand high quality, preferably people with scientific background, to be able to meet the standards of the group in the medical group experts. Our 2 representatives were Eva Stormarken, who is here, a registered nurse, an anesthetic nurse, and Master of Science in Nursing. She has also worked as an assistant professor at a university college for more than 10 years. And the other one is Reidun Gran Alkange, who is sitting up there. She's the vice leader of the ME Association for 12 years and also a registered nurse, and who has worked as a community nurse and at the renowned rehabilitation hospital, Sunnaas University Hospital. We were informed of the members of the expert group, 10 in all. That was a heart-sink experience, as we discovered that 2 of them were of the hardcore of the Wesley School in Norway. And as it turned out later, about half the group belonged to the Wesley School. What chance do the few real ME experts have in such a group, we wondered. The work started in spring of 2004 and was completed in June 2006. Eva and Reidun were both highly secretive about what was actually going on at the meetings. They were not allowed to talk. But we know that they had a hard time. However, we were a team, and as for myself, I was very much involved in all the written work. It was hard work, long hours, short deadlines, and a lot of frustration. We contributed with several documents, such as keywords for searching strategies, patient stories we had gathered over several years, patients' experiences with standard medical treatments and alternative therapies, a lot about published research, including biomedical research, and also in particular the old medical literature from years back, all the historical epidemics which best describe ME. There were many drafts report. The first one was terrible. All the consumers disagreed and made protest and argued strongly, using published medical articles to verify our points of view. We had some influence on the report, in particular the opening part. Therefore, we felt that the report would have been even worse without our participation. We also believe that the Knowledge Centre had not expected such high-quality work from us. However, although we had had some influence on the report, it was not enough. The two distant communicators pulled out in protest, one early and the other one later. We decided to continue, but started to prepare our own documents and arguments. We had a strategy. But to be reassured, I consulted Professor Malcolm Hooper and also Dr. Charles Shepherd of the ME Association, since he had participated in the NICE project. Both said the same, independently of each other: pull out and go to the press before rather than later. And that is what we did. The day before the report was due to be presented at a highly publicized seminar, we pulled out. We did not go to the press. The main national newspaper, Aftenposten, contacted me about the project, and I let the cat out of the bag. At this stage, we were about to collapse, in particular poor Eva, who had done a tremendous job in producing a massive amount of written reports, all beautifully set up and presented in such a way that a report should be. Our very last effort was to get our comments to the report out on our website, and late that night it was all there: key points, short version, and full version. We know that all the papers were much read, in fact, by many thousands. June 9th, 2006 was the day when the much publicized seminar, when the finished report was to be presented to the people from the Social and Health Directorate who had commissioned the report: doctors, healthcare workers, and others, including patients. And that morning, the headlines in Aftenposten read: "Conflict about mystery disease. The ME Association is merciless in their criticism of the new report about the unexplained disease which strikes thousands of Norwegians. The doctor behind the report believes that the association is doing themselves a disservice. This research project is a scandal," says Ellen Piro, leader of the ME Association, and she continues: "We had hoped that the report would take the ME patients seriously and show that this is not a psychiatric condition. Instead, the Knowledge Centre conclude that the report that this is an in-between psychiatric and somatic condition. With such a conclusion, the situation for people with ME will become far worse than it already is. The consumer's experience and knowledge have not been sufficiently considered." These are some of the key words for the reasons why we pulled out. I'm sure that you'll find them very similar to the comments made about the NICE guidelines here in the UK. No diagnostic code, why not? Recommend CBT and GT as the only treatment options, this in spite of the fact that all the studies are weak. Reinforces the belief that ME is a behavioral problem. Little focus on research which shows pathological abnormalities. The consumer's arguments were ignored. The authors advocate hypotheses for which there are no scientific basis. The results from research on heterogenic groups cannot be generalized to ME patients. The chosen inclusion criteria were too wide. The studies included their meta-analysis are criticized for methodological flaws. The results from the meta-analysis of the effect of different treatments are very weak. And you'll find a complete list of our key points on the Invest in ME's website. I will also add that Menin, the other group, did not pull out, but was just as critical as we were in their comments, which were later added to the final report. In other words, none of the consumers accepted the report or supported the report. We were simply not heard. We were aware that there were close ties between NICE and the Knowledge Centre. Therefore, we believe that the report was predetermined. There were discussions between the Knowledge Centre and NICE about the studies, about what would be included, and the meta-analysis and other aspects. We were not treated as equal partners in this project. Our arguments were largely ignored. We experienced that we had been made hostages to ensure the external validity of the report. On top of that, we did not see the final version of the report before publication. We had pulled out, but we were not out. In September, we received a letter from the Social and Health Directorate with some questions they wanted us to answer, basically about the needs for healthcare services for people with ME. A month later, we delivered yet another document, just as thorough and well presented as all the others. Documentation is important. Then we were invited to a meeting with the Directorate, together with Menin, the other group. It was a good meeting, and they appeared forthcoming. There are other matters to consider in the event of things, but unfortunately there's not enough time for that. Throughout the year, we had a tremendous run with the media, national TV, newspapers, magazine. The focus was on the patients and their awful situation. In November, we were contacted by Laila Dove's office, a member of parliament in opposition, and we had a meeting. Laila Dove is our hero. She intended to forward an interpellation to the Minister of Health and wanted some background information. Now, I believe that this is a different procedure than you have in the British government or parliament here. So this is the definition for an interpellation. An interpellation in parliament is a procedure of demanding that a government official explain some act or policy. Pardon?
Never get one here.
No. On March 29th, it happened. On March 29th, 2007 is a historic day. This was the day when the ME patients were heard in Norway, as people with ME should be heard all over the world. On March 29th, the case of ME was debated in the Norwegian Parliament. Laila Dove, Christian People's Party, forwarded an interpellation about the case of ME to the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health, Sylvia Brustad, Labour, who had to answer the interpellation, put forward a long list of undertakings. She proposed a national competence network. The network will include the consumers, personnel from primary healthcare and caring services, as well as other representatives from the specialist health service. Build up competence through research, professional development, consultancies, guidance, and teaching within specialist health services. Establish a register to support research of high quality. Consumers' involvement at all levels. That's good. better and individual healthcare services in both primary and secondary care, more appropriate welfare benefits, and funding, fresh money. It led to a debate lasting for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Many members talked, and the Norwegian ME Association was given credit for the good work we had done for the people with ME. They all agreed that the situation was totally unacceptable. They were all in total agreement. Our members of Parliament and the Minister of Health managed to cut through all the controversies, debates, uncertainties, and focused on the patients only and how they're being treated and cared for. We are, of course, more than delighted, but we shall now have to wait and see what happens, how it works, and most importantly, how people with ME themselves experience all the undertakings promised. However, we feel that we have had the support of the Norwegian Parliament, and our hero, Laila Dove, will follow up. This should be an example to all. It is possible to move forward, in spite of all the disagreements and difficulties. I appeal to all politicians all over the world. Look to the Norwegian politicians who listened to the patients and took them seriously. The patients know best how they feel and how they should be cared for. They must get proper care and they must be treated with respect. And in the meantime, let the researchers get the funding they so badly need to get on with their difficult task to find out the cause of this disease and a possible treatment. Give us all a chance. A person with ME commented on the forum, "I was touched and surprised that the members of Parliament seem to know more about ME than my GP." Thank you and good luck to all of you from all of us.